Good evening, everyone. It's 5:30 on May 1st, 2024, and I am going to call the Mashpee Public School Committee business meeting to order. Our first item is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Mashpee Public Schools recognize and honor the many generations of Wampanoag people who live and have been sustained in this territory for more than 10,000 years. Okay. Next item, we are going to ratify the agenda of May 1st. One thing, and I didn't check this morning to make sure it was noted. No, we didn't have it. Okay. All right. On item number 5, update planning for school year 24-25, including the Mandarin program at MMHS, I would like to allow for public comment during that item. So there'll be public comment on all the other items, but then for item 5, like a separate public comment for that item.
So are you asking that if anyone has public comment related to that, having to hold it?
Yes, please. Yes. Thank you. And it looks like we do have 2 people who are looking to speak separate from that. So any other changes or questions or anything?
Can I ask you, do you want to note under the item 12 about there'll be some tuition waiver request?
Yes, and with item 12, we do have some tuition waivers that came in prior to post publication of the agenda. That being said, I will entertain a motion to ratify tonight's agenda.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the agenda with the edits of allowing public comment during item 5 and adding the tuition waivers request to item 12.
Thank you. Need a second, please?
I will second.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I do have just one question.
Yes.
In regard to the executive session, whether or not we need to return to open session to ratify any potential vote, since there's a vote listed.
That is a good point. Yes, we probably should edit that to reconvene an open session. Okay, so now with the 3 edits, the person who made the motion and seconded, are you good with that third?
Yes. I'm good. Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call to vote. Dan?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
And I also am a yes. Okay, so next we have public comment, and I just want to remind everyone public comment is for 3 minutes. If you have anything longer you wish to say, feel free to please email it to the school committee and we will gladly read it and take it under advisement. We do not respond to public comment. We listen, but we will obviously listen and take it again under advisement. But unfortunately, it is not a time for us to discuss or deliberate. That being said, since we talked about that, Brian Gangemi regarding the superintendent search process.
This is a matter of process. There's a bit of an issue with how you modify the agenda. My remarks overlap in covering that topic as well as the status of the Mandarin program. So is it better that I wait?
No,
You can't separate it. It's a single delivery of remarks within the 3-minute limit. So per your modification of the agenda, would you like me to?
If it's regarding the Mandarin program predominantly, then yes, I would ask that you hold.
Most of what I'll address is the Mandarin program.
Okay.
So I'll wait.
Okay.
For
All right,
agenda time for
that's fine.
modification. Thank you.
Suzanne Pattengill, is yours a similar situation or?
Yeah.
Okay,
I have just the one topic.
okay, thank you.
And hopefully you can hear me with this. As you may or may not know, I'm Suzanne Werfelman-Pettengill. I'm a teacher here and the president of the Mashpee Teachers Association. I'm here to present a hard copy of a letter that was sent to the school committee last week via email, and attached to it are signatures from staff members. The association is requesting that a fair and transparent national search be conducted for our next superintendent of schools. I don't see this person here, but we were pleased to see that at least Mr. Glenn Kutcher from MassKey is here. I'm sorry, didn't see you. Hello, I'm glad to see you are here then. Is here tonight to help start what we hope is an expedient process. Again, what we are asking is that the hiring protocols used for such an important position be upheld, and that a search committee composed of various stakeholders be formed to conduct interviews. Thank you. And I do have for you, if you would like the hard copy with the letter, with the signatures, I do have that for you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. All right. I know a few people walked in, just to let you know, those who just walked in, right now is public comment on anything but the Mandarin program. We will allow for public comment on that at that time in the agenda. Okay, anyone else for public comment on our agenda aside from the Mandarin program before we move on? Okay, hearing none. Let's move on to the approval of minutes of March 20th, 24. That's pages 1 and 2 of our packet. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the March 20th minutes.
Thank you, Dawn. Need a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion?
Yes. Under in regard to Bonnie Brady, maybe I missed it during the meeting, but is she acting or is she?
No, she's permanent.
Okay, because minutes say acting.
What page you on?
Page 1.
Page 1. I thought I missed something during the meeting.
No, you didn't.
Oh, no, yeah, take acting out.
Yes.
Did you see that, Sherry? It's under introduction on the page 1, who will be the acting principal of Mashpee Middle High School beginning July 1.
Who will
No,
be
she
the
will be
principal?
Take acting.
Strike acting.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha. Thank you.
She will be acting the part, but
Well, it's not
on
hope
a
acting. Let's hope she will
hopefully permanent
be.
basis.
Okay. Any other edits or amendments? Hearing none, I'll call to vote. Dan?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Matt?
Abstain?
Brian?
Abstain.
And I also am a yes. Thank you. And next we have the minutes of April 10th, 2024. Entertain a motion to approve.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes of April 10th, 2024.
Okay,
I'll second.
thank you. Any amendments to be offered? Hearing none, I'll call to vote. Dan?
I'll abstain.
Matt?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
And I also am a yes. All right, thank you very much. Okay, item 5, which is update planning for school year 24-25, including the Mandarin program at MMHS. We currently had 4 people wishing to speak on this item. Anyone else who did not get to sign up before we could start the process here of public comment? Okay. All right, so
Madam
Mrs.
Chair, we
oh,
did have
sorry.
one more
I'm
person.
sorry, I did not see your hand behind there. You want to just write your name, someone? While that's happening, Mrs. Asada, if you'd like to take the chair, please introduce yourself. Oh, for those who don't know you.
No, I'm on a time.
You're all set.
Good evening, members of the school committee, Superintendent DeBoer and Assistant Superintendent Hanscom and all others in attendance. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am a parent of a 9th grade and a 7th grade student at Mashpee Middle High School. My son in 9th grade is just about to complete his 2nd year of Mandarin at Mashpee Middle High School. At the end of the 7th grade exploratory language program, he made the decision to continue with Mandarin because he loved the idea of a challenge. And even then, he recognized the opportunity to learn what he told us is the 2nd most widely spoken language in the world. Unfortunately, he recently told us that the Mandarin program would not continue at school next year, and like many other students also in his position, now feels extremely disappointed at the possibility of not continuing with his selected language of study. So I'm here tonight to advocate passionately for the continuation of our Mandarin program, or at the least allowing students currently enrolled and committed to finish the recommended and sought after 4 years of a single language. Many colleges recommend at least 3 years of the same world language, but 4 years is preferred for a student to be considered competitive in the admissions pool. It seems quite unfair to put these current Mandarin students in a situation where they are now worried that they cannot attain this goal, unlike their peers who are enrolled in French or Spanish programs. Besides academic pursuits, learning Mandarin opens the door to so many opportunities for our students. Proficiency in Mandarin is a valuable asset that can set our students apart with marketable skills when they enter an increasingly competitive job market. Surely cutting programs that make our students more linguistically and culturally proficient is not the way for Mashpee to go. Beyond the pragmatic benefits, the Mandarin program brings students into contact with people and cultures that are very different from our own, and in a way that encourages a respect for diversity. As a native Irish Gaeilge speaker myself, I understand more than most that language can be used to divide and unite people, to create barriers and to bring people together. Language is about culture. Language is tied to identity, worldview, philosophy, history, and experience. With this in mind, the Mandarin program represents not just a mere academic offering, but a gateway to cultural understanding, global competence, and enhanced opportunities for many of our students. I understand the challenges involved in maintaining programs, but I urge you to consider the immense value the Mandarin program brings to our school community and its impact on our students' future goals and endeavours. Please continue supporting the Mandarin program and reaffirm our commitment to providing our children with the tools they need to succeed in a diverse and interconnected world. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Andrew.
I'd just like to say before I go up and make my public comment, although I am student representative on this board, I am speaking by myself as a student, my opinions, not the opinions as a student rep. And just tell me when I can start.
You're good.
Good afternoon, school committee members. Thank you for your time. I stand in front of you, a student of Mashpee who has completed the Mandarin program to the AP level. We have the largest Mandarin program on Cape Cod, and we have the first AP Mandarin program on Cape Cod, thanks to the advocacy from our wonderful teacher, Miss Wong. I really hope we won't be the last AP Mandarin program on Cape Cod. Getting rid of the Mandarin course will not just cut another class from the school, but cut opportunities from students. We in the Mandarin program have had many opportunities to enhance our learning, from a summer camp in China to a Mandarin speaking competition on Cape. Multiple students in my class, me included, even got full ride scholarships and an insured job from the National Security Agency to any college in the nation for our Mandarin skills, thanks to a test that our teacher prepared us for and our understanding of not only the language, but the culture provided by our teacher, a native Mandarin speaker. Over 1 billion people in the world speak Mandarin. That's more than French and Spanish combined, at 774 million speakers worldwide. As the world becomes more and more interconnected, I hope we would not fall behind and be ignorant of languages that are different from what we know and continue to foster a spirit of education for our students. I believe students at Mashpee deserve the best opportunities for education, and getting rid of a program that provides so many opportunities for our school community would be a shame. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, now Mr. Yanjumi.
Good evening, all.
I wanted to speak on 2 items as noted on the sign-in sheet, that of the proposed elimination of the Mandarin program, as well as at the end, the upcoming superintendent search for school year 24-25. I share my perspective as a Mashpee Public Schools graduate, a parent of a Mashpee Public Schools student, and someone who has spent recent decades carving out a pathway to finally call Mashpee home again after living many years elsewhere in the Commonwealth and beyond. On the first topic, I want to convey my family's lived experience on the value of Mashpee's foreign language offerings. Spanish offerings while in middle and high school were critical in setting me forward on a path as an engaged and lifelong learner. My love for Spanish as a subject here in Mashpee compelled me to pursue Spanish literature as one of my majors during my undergraduate studies. Scholarships, grant stipends, and my ability to earn and learn in my capacity as a Spanish tutor essentially allowed me to complete my undergraduate studies debt-free. I've used Spanish across a multitude of jobs over the past 2 decades and have been afforded opportunities to work in Mexico and Ecuador, conduct research in Colombia, and regularly work with Spanish-speaking communities across the Commonwealth. Spanish was the academic and linguistic foundation that has helped me acquire Portuguese at a professional level, which has opened up further opportunities. This lifelong learning, personal and professional growth trajectory is owed to everyone in this room, my current former educators, you all, in that you all have built, as defined in the mission, the very student-centered comprehensive program of rigor, scope, and depth espoused in said mission. My brother, who was once your student, Dr. DeBoer, has benefited immensely from his Mandarin studies. Though this district's Mandarin program was not online when my brother was a student here, he learned Mandarin in his early 20s and has worked in a bilingual capacity between the US and China since his mid-20s. Mandarin was a foundation for him to learn conversational Korean, allowing him to live and work in my sister-in-law's home country, where my nephew Sam and my niece Yuna access universal pre-K, which I will speak to further in some moments. Yes, what we are experiencing in Mashpee is a decline in enrollment for Mandarin, which reflects a nationwide trend. Yes, the current enrollment creates challenges like those that have been cited in the newspaper. However, despite those challenges, I urge an adaptive, differentiated approach in preserving the educational trajectory. The current cohort of Mandarin students, many of whom are seemingly here in this room in support, as to not undermine the richness of experience that has already been articulated that will help shape their respective futures. My brother would have immensely benefited had Mandarin been offered at an earlier point in his education. In light of the 5-class 80 to 100 student caseload expectations cited in the newspaper, I only ask that consideration be given to what my experience was as a young student here 30 years ago, when Ms. Vieira could convene a class of 50 to 75 students in chorus, while Ms. Hill could work with a smaller cohort of students, 7 to 9, in clay work in that arts class. I urge you to do everything in your power as a governance body to ensure that at best, this critical program remain intact, to ensure a wide range of foreign language options remain available, and at minimum that the current cohort of students is not subject to disruption in their current course of study. One last lesson learned in terms of what we've gained most as a family from our collective Mashpee public education is rich insight and deeper commitment in advocating for all public school students. Mashpee Public Schools is a paragon for early childhood education. My brother and his family's experience afforded my nephew Sam and my niece Yuna to access a national universal pre-K system. And as our school's mission states, we seek to prepare all students to be college, career, service, and civic ready. Please count me in as a partner in advocating for our youngest learners across the Commonwealth in lifting up and uplifting the very robust pre-K program we have here as an inspiration for other communities in the Commonwealth who want that same access for the benefit of all communities. Lastly, and in the same spirit of civic commitment, I want to briefly address the upcoming superintendent search process. I ask that the excellence and standards we have as a school district be reflected in the process you will all help craft to fill the soon-to-be vacant superintendent role. I am one of many parents, residents excited, ready, and willing to engage in supporting this effort at this critical juncture. And what we ask in that body is simply a fair, transparent process that reflects our community's values. Thank you for your years of service, Dr. DeBoer, and a happy retirement to you and your family. Thanks to the committee for your leadership through all this time and in going forward. And thanks to all the educators here, students, who I feel incredibly blessed can be part of a learning community that's going to benefit my daughter in the way that my brothers and I have benefited from here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Trey, I don't want to mispronounce your last name, so if you wouldn't mind pronouncing it, so for the record at least. Thank you.
Good evening, school board. My name is Trey Ruthven. I'm here as a parent of a Mashpee Middle High School sophomore who is actually in his Mandarin 3 program. I'm sure you're all aware of me because you've been getting emails from me all last week kind of describing my concerns about the program and actually looking at the information that had been provided and showing that it didn't actually represent what it was supposed to. As a parent, I've always been very encouraged by Mashpee schools, and this is why we've kept our kids in Mashpee programs. It presents opportunities for these kids to explore different things, but also advance and then move into the world. My son's decision to move into Mandarin started when he was in 6th grade, when we had foreign exchange students here. We had one come stay with us. That started that, cycle of building. He moved over to middle high school, and that's continued and through Mandarin 3. I mean, his goals have already been clearly stated that he wants to hit Mandarin 4 next year and AP Mandarin his senior year before going off to college. And as he's looking at engineering schools, he's already hearing from admission staff that, we need 3 years at minimum, and especially what you're looking to do, which is to study abroad, you need to hit through AP. So what we're doing is we're ending a program without a plan in place, and that's become very evident through these emails, is that we've ended a program with no plan to replace it or to carry these kids through to the end of the graduation. The part that's been made also in the paper is that Mashpee Middle High School is a smaller school. It is. You can look at the data. However, Mashpee Middle High School is no different than any other Cape school. We have the same number of teacher ratios to foreign language programs that other schools have, except for Barnstable, which is an entirely different animal. I mean, anywhere from 2 to 5 times bigger than any other school on Cape. If you look at the languages offered between all the schools, Mashpee right now at 3 is keeping up with everyone. However, we start dropping down to 2, we're at the bottom. And is that really a program where all of you and Mrs. DeBoer have been working countless years of trying to make this program as it is, where other kids want to come to this town, and all of a sudden we're taking away those opportunities from those kids? This just seems like we've decided to end a program without taking a good look at what it provides, how to take the steps to actually replicate that if it's not able to be had on, as it currently is. And it doesn't serve the town, it doesn't serve our students, and it really shouldn't continue. I mean, we should keep this program in place. It represents the cultural diversity that Mashpee is built on and that I hope continues to expand in Mashpee. Obviously, sending data back and forth through emails. If you have questions about any of it, feel free to ask me. I realize it's not an open dialogue, but it can be confusing, so feel free. Thank you, and I appreciate all your time this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and Perrin Jones.
Hi. I'm an 8th grader. Sorry.
That's okay. Don't worry. Do you need a Kleenex or something? I was like, it's all right. I know it's a little intimidating sitting here, but we're all parents. We all get it. So take a deep breath. Be okay. We're going to listen. That's all we do is listen. So you say what you need to say and take a minute. You certainly can, of course. Of course. I know it's kind of scary to do this for the first time, believe me.
Really proud of her for
No,
to speak up.
I commend her for speaking up too, so please, whenever you're ready.
I was always told to talk about what I believe in and speak up and fight for what I believe. And I really think that you guys should keep Mandarin on the board, and that it is a positive effect in our school community. It really is. I mean, I see kids every day go from one class to another, and the teachers don't really get them. But when they walk into Ms. Wan's class, they go in there with a smile because they know that she really gets the students. It's not just about the subjects with language, which is great, by the way. She does a great job teaching. It's also about the positive effects that she has on us and how she kind of motivates us every day, because she doesn't just teach us. She teaches us about the culture, and she teaches us about the language, and she also teaches us about how to face everything and how challenges are in life, but we can get through them. She tells us stories and relates back to everything. And she really just is a positive impact and effect on the school community. And she just, like, kids walk in there and they just smile. They say, ni hao or min hao. And it really brings the class together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Before we move to a committee discussion, does anyone else, before I close public comment, anyone else wish to make any comments at this time regarding the Mandarin program? Okay. Thank you all for your comments. As the committee knows and has been in receipt of, we've been getting some emails about the recent decision to discontinue the program, and I believe the intent was to offer an online program for the remainder of the years, you know, to get those students who were seeking 3+ years to that point. Does that, you know, that was the plan as I understood. And it was not due to budget, it was due to enrollment, as has been stated. Superintendent Ford, do you want to kind of?
I just wanted to say that we have explored the virtual high school that many other high schools do use for those students who wanted to continue beyond their 2 years, as you're talking about third and fourth year. There are opportunities for that. However, I do know that our teaching association is against going to a virtual option for students, and if there is an objection to that as a solution, then we probably can't offer Mandarin if the plan goes forward. We did put a lot of time into this process for planning for 24-25 with the high school principal, actually all of our principals. We started looking across all of our schools, and we, you know, the town does support our budget to a point, but we all know that wastewater is a competing for the dollars. And so given the budget that we have, and also acknowledging that we have struggling learners in certain categories, we wanted to look at everything sort of as a system, not individual schools, to reduce class sizes at our elementary levels so that the students who are struggling to become proficient as readers can be addressed. And then we also wanted to reduce class sizes in our 7th and 8th grade classes to help with their transition and also get them into a better position. And then we also looked at the numbers in our CP level classes, wanting to reduce those as well. So there are a lot of components that went into the decision making. Also looking at Mashpee Middle High School, where leading into this year had 8 teachers in the main core subject areas, and we have been for many years feeding 6 homerooms up. So therefore there was a belief that we could reduce in each of the 4 main departments to accommodate the need to reduce class sizes in various locations. I have the high school principal, Ms. McSweeney, has worked very hard at looking at all offerings we have at the high school. We have cut other electives. We've looked at enrollments where the numbers are 10 or less, and adjustments have been made. It hasn't been sort of an entire program like you're seeing with Mandarin, but Mandarin is not the only area that we are looking at, with the overall goal is working within our budget. We are not making cuts because of the budget, but we are looking at our resources and our available teachers to make sure we can reduce class sizes. So that has been the goal of this activity, is to look at course loads and class sizes and make sure that we are using our budgeted funds the best we can to improve outcome for many, many students' outcomes.
Thank you.
I can give some student insight on the virtual high school. I know I can just tell you what they'll tell me that I've been told when we had virtual high school for physics, they didn't learn anything. I don't think it would be valuable to even have a virtual option if we had an option at all, because they wouldn't learn anything like they would with the program we have now.
And just to add, and I support what Andrew says in a sense, but last year in terms of the physics and the use of a virtual learning platform, there were glitches with the teaching piece of it leading up to that. There were many variables that led to students feeling that they weren't successful with the virtual option. We have many students who use a virtual platform called Ngenuity for various courses that they want to take, as well as for advanced courses for students who want to graduate early. So there are kids currently successfully using virtual learning.
Okay, thank you for that additional information. I'm going to open it up to the committee for any questions or comments. Dan, do you want to kick it off?
Let me think on it for a moment.
Okay, Don, anything?
Do you have any information in regard to the cohorts by in that program? How many do we have in Mandarin 1, 2?
Yes, so these are the signups for next year. We have Mandarin 2 Honors has 9 students. Mandarin 3 Honors has 10 students. Mandarin 4 has 10. And then there's a Mandarin 1 with 3 kids. I'm not sure if those are just beyond the 8th grade level, because we also have Mandarin 1 8, which means those are 8th graders with 12.
So, just to paraphrase what I'm hearing, if they're signing up for Mandarin 1, they have not had any Mandarin, at least at Mashpee previously. Is that correct?
So if they're signing, so prior to, or maybe including this year, there was an exploratory in 7th grade, which they have it in all of the languages as a way to get them.
The semester?
Yeah, it's like a 10-week.
Is that still available though? Like, I remember when my child went through that year, the choices were either to do the exploratory with the languages, but if they did band or chorus,
Right.
they do not get that exploratory.
That's correct.
It depended.
Exactly. So is that
Well,
still
no,
the,
some kids who were in band also got the exploratory. They just didn't then get art.
okay, but those students who don't get that opportunity, is that still the case of how that I mean, if the exploratory year is still offered, is that still the case that those students who opt for the arts track versus the language track are not getting that exploratory experience?
I believe there are some situations that students do not get that exposure because of their choices.
Okay.
Yeah. So
And
back to your
also,
question.
just to clarify then, I'm still confused. Mandarin 1, they may have had the exploratory semester slice of Mandarin.
Right, that's
correct.
the 10-week
For
exploratory.
10 weeks. Okay.
But they also may not have.
But they may not have, and we don't know based on without
We'd have to look.
digging into
We'd have to look at the 10.
the detail. Okay. Would Mandarin 1 be a full year program?
Yes, it is.
It is. And the same thing for 2, 3, and 4, correct?
Yes.
Brian, any questions or comments, thoughts?
I just wish there was more community input, and sorry that it had to come to this to kind of bring it to our attention. And I wish that, moving forward, we can work on a better solution to make sure that we are hearing from the student advisory representative and the students, because they're the ones that are impacted by this. So.
I can give some insight to that kind of. A lot of students came up to me when they heard about it. They hadn't heard that the program was getting canceled, so they didn't have like an amount of time where they could have like came to administrator or a teacher and been like, hey, what if we didn't get rid of this program? It was already decided. It seemed like from the wording that we were told by the time that they had come to me.
Matt?
I thought of so I know with sports we do this where we do co-op type things where there's not enough participants to do like one sport, so like we, like with other towns, do something like that? Is that something that they've ever done with like a language or a subject that was like, I don't know, I just thinking outside the box.
Well, we tried to come to a solution with that when we were doing the Wampanoag with other schools, actually having them become part of our program. That didn't work out. We have not reached out to the few other high schools that currently have Mandarin to see if there's any way of sort of having that off-site collaboration.
And dual enrollment isn't an option. You know how like we have.
Yeah, we can look into that.
You're shaking your head no, Andrew.
I looked into colleges, and I looked at Cape Cod Community College. I know that's where most people do their dual enrollment. I haven't seen a Mandarin course there.
With is there a reason we differentiate between Mandarin 1 and Mandarin 1.8? I mean, shouldn't Mandarin 1 be Mandarin 1? Is there a reason we segregate out the 8th graders? And I guess my question is, does it have to be, you know, I'm assuming that 2, 3, and 4 have a mixture of grade levels. Why are we segregating out Mandarin 1 and Mandarin 8?
I think that's just something that was in the scheduling options when the students selected. That would not run that way. They would have to be combined.
Okay,
Yeah.
so really Mandarin 1 would have 15 students then?
Based on this printout.
So the only kind of, okay, I struggle with this. I mean, as a parent who also, you know, and someone who was a language learner, I mean, I went all the way through AP French and studied it in college, did my time abroad, and value every minute of my French experiences that I've had. I understand the cultural aspect that you brought up, Andrew. The other side of me sees the, you know, struggling math scores, the struggling literacy scores, and it's like, will lower classrooms necessarily help? I like to think on some level, yes, teachers are able to better focus attention. Is that necessarily the answer? None of us really have a crystal ball. I'm struggling with this one. I mean, I would love to continue this program. I mean, 10 kids in a class does seem low. 9 kids definitely seems too low. And I know in college they'll cancel a class with that low enrollment. You know, you might sign up for it and it might get canceled. That being said, is that just an outlier year? Is the program growing with 15 kids interested in Mandarin 1? Are we going to start seeing an uptick? You know, hearing from all of the people who spoke tonight, reading the emails that have been received, hearing, you know, what we've heard, and knowing what we know about how our world is continually shrinking in terms of how we're connected and the way that we all interact. I don't.
So, Madam Chair, may I
Yes.
add? I guess I wanted to sit with it just because I'm similarly, personally, just kind of struggling with understanding the logistics behind it. You know, I can appreciate all of those aspects that went in and the time spent, but I think as we also look at our endeavors around DEIB work, and specifically what has kind of shined through with a lot of the presentations tonight, is the connectedness and the feeling of belonging that the students have obviously experienced through this course beyond just the language skill. So I guess a question, and please excuse me if I missed this along the way. It sounds with our budget itself, we've exhausted kind of the parameters of that, recognizing the desire to reduce class sizes and these other kind of pain point areas. Are there other external opportunities for us to increase funds, you know, grants, other things that could move us in a direction where we do not have to eliminate a program such as this? Any insight into that, and I would be helpful.
I don't know about the grant part of it. I mean, you obviously can choose to fund something out of school choice, even though most of that has been dedicated, and we had to allocate a greater portion of it to this budget because of numbers to work with the town.
How many, physical classes would this program actually have? I'm counting 4, is that correct?
4.
And what's a full-time teacher learn?
5.
5.
Would we be counting the exploratory in that or not?
That wasn't being planned for this year.
It wasn't.
So at most 4, potentially 3 if you're only gonna.
No, it's
No, it'd be
4.
4.
It's 4.
It
The
would be 5
exploratory is
with the
not on
exploratory.
here. The 7th
No.
grade.
Let me finish.
Okay, sorry.
So it's 4 if you include Mandarin 1, but if you want to address at least one concern regarding the cohort that's already in the program to finish, that's 3,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And then we'll become 2 and 1
That's right.
to finish out the program. Is that correct? And then I guess the question would be whether or not we would be able to have a resource or find a resource that would be able to teach at that level or teach it with that load, or are they licensed, or would they be licensed to teach another language or another program at Mashpee, correct?
Yes.
The current teacher is not licensed in anything but Mandarin though, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's not really.
That's not really an option,
that-
unfortunately.
that
At this time,
option's-
I mean, if the teacher was going to get licensed, I mean, that could be discussed.
But even if we did Mandarin 1, we still only have 4.
Exactly, you're still one short for
We're still short.
the full-time teacher contract.
What's the load right now for that teacher? 5? It has to be 5, right? So what's the one that I'm missing?
The exploratory in grade 7.
The exploratory.
I'm just wondering, when did we decide to get rid of exploratory? Was that ever before the committee?
It's part of the planning process with the middle high school. I don't know if Principal McSweeney's here.
I mean, it almost seems to me either trying to facilitate a run out of the program faces a lot of challenges, or even continuing it has challenges. So
You have to basically be comfortable with a class size of 10 for a teacher's course load.
right, but even with the 10, I only have 4 classes.
Oh, I know.
So, and if we're not going to put it back in as an exploratory, which even there, I'm not sure if that would have been a full year class. Or?
No, it's still 10 weeks, but in looking at past data, it didn't appear to be generating the interest that would need to sustain the program.
This is where Mashpee and probably every other small school struggles, where you become singularly dependent upon a resource to maintain either a course program, which we saw unfortunately last year or 2 years ago now. In our computer science, we lost our gaming, we lost a teacher there. No more program. You know, that disappeared, unfortunately, without, unfortunately, much public comment on it. And then, you know, we're in another situation here with this.
Except I feel this one's a little bit more, I have to be honest, I feel this one's a little bit more grave in a sense because of the language requirements that most four-year colleges are looking for. And we heard some comments tonight, and knowing what the colleges are looking for, that unique factor for each applicant, having 4 years of a language or 3 years of a language does tend to set one apart from their peers. And some of these kids would be stuck without hitting that 3-year mark. I mean, 2 years is the minimum to graduate, but, and this is, again, the struggle point for me. It's I don't want to leave children without that. But like you said, Don, there's some challenges in the program and maintaining it at these numbers. It's hard to justify a class of just 9 students when we have like AP classes and other disciplines that have 30.
Well, even if I got over the 9 student issue, I still don't have enough to have a full-time teacher.
Yeah, you could consider doing a 3/5 position this year, a 2/5 position, and then a 1/5 position the final year, and then it's phased out. But that could put a strain on the teacher who may or may not need that full salary. I don't know how the distance for traveling to this location
Right.
can be challenging.
Staffing it becomes exponentially harder. If it's
And
not a
it
full-time
is
teacher.
difficult to get a Mandarin teacher, and if this schedule didn't work, then we still would be in a similar situation of not being able to offer it.
And the exploratory program is being discontinued for all, correct? It's not just Mandarin that's being
It's
discontinued?
Mandarin because it wasn't generating the interest and growth, and it's being substituted with a reading executive functioning program for 7th graders to sort of set them off in a better, from what we've observed, that they need.
So French and Spanish will still be offered as exploratory?
I think so. Is that true? Principal McSweeney, is French and Spanish still exploratory in grade 7?
And the Mashpee history.
And Wampanoag history class is still exploratory.
So so in that, the exploratory program would be the 10 weeks of the Wampanoag history, am I doing math right here? Is one?
I believe it's like a semester.
It's a quarter.
It's a quarter.
But 10 weeks, yes, that's correct.
Okay. So it would now just be those 4. And the reading would go for all students? It wouldn't be needs-based? It's going to be all 7th grade students taking that?
It's executive functioning
exec-
support, so it's organizational study
Yeah.
skills.
And it can be
But
differentiated by levels.
And they'll still have the band and the art too?
So is that like the WIN class at Quashnet?
No, but that's good that you
When
remember
is it?
that.
I know, right? So Brian, did you hear that?
But is it
Andrew
going to be like
remembers
highlighting PDFs like we were talking about before? Like, I guess I'm trying to understand what that is.
when. I don't know, you're looking.
Highlighting.
I don't know
Well, because
the-
it was something
Oh.
we got into it one night about highlighting and finding.
Oh, when we were doing
citing,
that, yes,
yes.
that's right. I
Is that
um,
what the executive functioning is?
So what we were looking at is feedback from 7th grade teachers, is that sometimes the transition from Washington to the Mashpee Middle High School community, giving them, working with them on reading, and also organizational skills, time management, how to prepare themselves for the next level of teaching. So it was based on feedback that we received from many of the 7th grade staff and parents and teachers of helping them to transition to the 7th grade. Because it is different. Also taking a look at some reading scores, and when we had to make a difficult decision, certainly an excellent teacher in the program. When we made that decision that was based on enrollment numbers, we said, well, to maintain that rotation for the 7th graders, what would be best for these young people that are coming up to the high school, and that's what we came to the building that small.
How many are enrolled in Spanish and French 1? Do we know that? Or how many have
For
signed up?
8th grade?
Just both. Because if we're
Spanish.
combining, again, I don't know why it's, I feel like it should be just French 1, Spanish 1, Mandarin 1, but that's a different.
So Okay, so we have an outlier French 1 with 5, similar to the Mandarin 1, and then we have French 1 with 21 kids, Spanish, that's the 8th grade one. Spanish 1 has 65 kids, and if there's an outlier, Spanish 1 CP with 14 kids. So there's 65 and 14 for Spanish, and 5 and 21 for French.
So 26 French and 79 Spanish first year, 15 Mandarin first year. So French is starting to also come into jeopardy here, basically.
I have some insight on that. What students see when they see that they need to take a language, they'll choose the easiest language, most likely. So that's a lot of Spanish and not a lot of French or Mandarin.
Which is weird because French is very much like English grammatically. But that's cool.
Yeah. So that's just what I've heard from students.
No, I appreciate that insight. It's also good to know things haven't changed that much. But just looking at those numbers, I mean, that's only 10 students different from Mandarin to French. But 26 kids in one French class is a high number as well. So,
is there like a way to like look at the paths of like how to have other accreditations or what it would take to bridge that gap so that we could like maintain like, you know, if that teacher is capable like in the time to get into the next school year, like to be able to do something else that, I don't know, like, you know, look at here are some paths that we could support it, you know, like with having like other things filled and like at least, you know, trying to entertain that so that way it's not just like, hey, we're looking at the numbers right now and we're just going to call a hard cut.
I know all I can say is I from the Mandarin teachers that we've had, they have very specialized backgrounds, and getting licensure through DESE is sometimes a different process than it is for sort of all the traditional license areas. So I can't speak for how easy it would be to get other licenses.
okay. We don't necessarily have a vote on this tonight. You know, obviously a decision one way or the other would most likely be appreciated rather expediently, not just for the students, the teachers, but everyone involved so that any adjustments that may or may not need to be made can be.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
At this point, it's been publicly announced that the program will be discontinued. Is that correct?
As far as I know.
And the teacher's been notified, correct?
Correct.
One option, if the committee wants to move in that direction, would be to look at, as we talked about a little bit ago, a wind-up program with, to facilitate those who are currently in a cohort that is level 2 and above. But the challenge here obviously is that it will not require a full-time resource. And I have no idea whether or not there's a part-time resource that is interested, but that could be a conversation that the superintendent could explore to see whether or not that's even a viable option. And then that would give, I think, the committee some additional information.
Well, and I don't want to misspeak for the teacher, but I had spoken to the association president in terms of them being open to a part-time arrangement.
Well, it sounds like there's at least some people who would beg to differ with that approach. So I think we need to at least have the information of whether or not the resource is available, and then if we need to have a conversation with the union and express that this is potentially a direction, then if they're not going to be willing to work with the school, then that's a different issue. So that would be my suggestion. I think that could be just done through consensus.
And my sense would be that if we were to support an approach like that, and further down the road there seemed to be an increased interest in this language, offers fodder opportunity to reassess and decide budgetarily which approach to take. Would that be my sense in the recommendation?
It would open up that option for reconsideration down the road. But you gotta go through
Correct.
the first date or toll date first.
Correct.
My only cautionary statement would be if you are going to sort of support a class size of 9 or 10, you open the doors where other classes that we're not running, or teachers who say, X teacher is only teaching 50 students and I have 100 on my caseload, we all get paid the same money. There's an issue of equity there.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know that there's really an easy answer to any of this.
But I think it's worth exploring though. Like,
I agree.
Like,
I agree.
That's the whole point of this. Is like people came and said, hey, like my kid has a plan, and like we started it, and they're kind of not being able to continue it. So I think it's worth exploring. Yeah.
Since we're going to explore that route, could I also ask that I know polling middle schoolers can be met with mixed results, and I understand that the 7th grade team has expressed their thoughts on it, but are there students in 7th and 8th grade who would like that opportunity for exploratory Mandarin? Like, can we get a sense of what the students, like, there may have been some that knew it was coming up and were looking forward to it. I guess I'm just trying to figure out, like, if the pipeline, looking at what is enrolled right now, you are seeing a bit of a jump from, Mandarin 2 has 9 students, but there's 15 signed up currently for Mandarin 1. Is it a pipeline issue? Is it what's exposure issue? I guess that's my question. Like, if we know we had people who were interested in Wampanoag, but we just didn't have the resource. We have a resource, but we aren't totally sure of the interest. And I guess that's, or like getting that pipeline going, I guess is my other thought here. I understand though, and I do have the same concern though about equity for our faculty, because they do work very hard. They do overextend themselves sometimes, and the whole point of this was to make it a little bit more manageable so that they could be more student focused and address learning deficits and help students really hone their skills. So like, this is why I'm struggling so much with it. It's not as clear cut one direction or the other, because there are so many factors in this situation. I don't know, I guess I'd like to hear if there are 7th graders who were interested in that opportunity. I don't know if that's feasible.
So I feel like you would be asking 6, because we currently ran it,
sure.
And they had their choice to pick 8th grade. I think what Andrew said is more the reason behind is that Mandarin is a challenging language, and so students get their 10-week exposure in the 3 languages offered at Mashpee. They know they have a language requirement. They kind of go the easiest way, and then you get a certain group or type of student who is interested in the challenge.
If I can add something to that, I feel like we just really don't have enough information to make a decision. I feel like we don't have the number. I feel like there's a better way to collect data. I'm not necessarily. It's data. It's data. It can't be messed with. It's good data, but I feel like if there's so many questions about the program, I feel like we should keep it instead of just getting rid of something without knowing exactly what our interest is and how many people we're going to have next year. Because next year we might have 0 strictly because that exploratory was cut. I know that exploratory, it almost seems like it was made to get rid of the Mandarin program. I don't know what the timeline on those decisions were, but it feels like they just, like, either the decision was made to cut it and then they did that, they got rid of the exploratory, or they got rid of the exploratory and then the decision was made. And I feel like the timeline that happened in is very important.
Yes, I was
Yeah.
going to say.
The students went through the process of selecting the courses, as all students will know. Students went through the process of selecting the courses. We had a course with study, STEM, and students chose. We then just went through the process via the department head and honestly looked at enrollment. And the courses that were under 10, we were eliminating those courses based on what our directive was for CP level courses to be 16 students, et cetera, et cetera. So when we looked at numbers in eliminated courses, that's when it would begin to come out of the rotation and we made the insertion based on what we thought would be best for young people coming from the 6th grade to the 7th grade, that transition piece. So it was not made before at all. It was made after the process of looking at numbers. And as families may know, our guidance counselors are working with young people at the high school because there are courses, many courses that can drop to numbers. Again, excellent teacher in our management program. The result of that strictly based on the directive that we given, the goals of the district. We looked at numbers and we began with 10, and if 10 or under, then we were removing it. That's just to give you the history, that's just the factual piece, but I hope that is a good one.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
All right.
How hard is it to provide the committee with historical enrollment in the Mandarin program
We can get that for you.
by level?
Yeah.
I think that would be interesting, rather than just looking at the current snapshot. We could see what the trend was over the last 3 or 4 years. Okay.
All right. Any last comments before we? So to be clear, the committee, as consensus, is asking the superintendent to discuss with Mashpee Teachers Association and potentially the teacher whether or not the part-time position is an option, to phase out for the students that are currently in the program and continue it for those that are currently enrolled, and then also to get historical enrollment by level of the program for its, since it's been provided in the school. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, and everyone is in agreement with that? And then we can revisit.
Yeah, because then you got the data to make decisions about either like the reduction or the expansion, you know, maybe one way or another. Yeah.
All right. Thank you again all for your comments, and you're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but if you don't want to, we understand. We don't always have big crowds, but we'll be taking this up at our next meeting, if not sooner. May 15th is our next meeting, so. Okay, moving on. Do we have anyone from the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe here tonight? No? Okay. All right. Student Advisory Committee Representative Andrew Kelly, your report.
Sorry. We've had, nearing the end of the year, we haven't had as much people show up to our meetings as we'd like, as you know. I don't want to be a dead horse. I know we just talked about it. You know what the students have been talking about, the Mandarin program. Other than that, I haven't gotten much feedback from people. Seniors are completing their senior projects, and we'll have their presentations soon. I would like to report that we did elect a new, I don't know if it's president or chair.
Chair.
We did elect a new chair.
Yeah.
Is Eve Mann.
Okay.
So she will. I don't know exactly when my term ends. I know
Pretty much when you graduate.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So I want to bring her to the next, if that's okay.
Yes, please.
And I'd like to announce my intention to help her at her first couple of meetings.
To onboard her? Sure.
Yes. Because I wouldn't feel right doing this position after I graduated and just leaving and dropping the ball for someone else.
Totally understandable. All right. Any questions for Andrew before we move on? Okay.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
Andrew.
All right. Up next, we have the report of the superintendent, which I believe is pages 5 through 14. We're gonna kind of start with recognitions, though, I believe, right?
Yes. And within those pages, if you have questions on anything, I'd be happy to address it. But I have sort of two areas of recognition. The first one I'd like to do is to say, which I don't know if they're all here though, but today is National School Principals Day. And today's National School Principals Day.
They're principling.
And so I would like the three principals to come up.
What am I doing? Oh, yes.
It's like the old school Oprah.
And you get it.
Madam Chair.
Patty Page is the question.
Do you guys need more hands?
Sorry for my hair.
Let's say, should we take any photos of this?
Yes.
You're in a better vantage.
I love
Dan,
it.
you're in a better vantage.
I want to be wearing a sweatshirt.
You're in a better vantage point.
I didn't know that.
So I just want to acknowledge from my perspective how hardworking these three individuals are and how grateful I am as the superintendent to be able to work alongside them. They have really done a great job this year. They are very student-centered decision makers. And I know that Kathy McSweeney's only been here for this year, but I'm so grateful that she came into our world. She's done an outstanding job of sort of steering the MMHS ship up there. And this year, Principal O'Brien shifted down to the Coombs School, and we're very grateful that she took on that challenge. I will say about Mary Kate, having worked with her for many years, she is definitely a lifelong learner and has always been willing to shift and take on new challenges. So I'm very appreciative of that. And then we have our new Quashnet principal, Elijah Switzer. And again, I'm very grateful that we found him and that he is committed to this school. I have been able to watch him in this role in year one and been very impressed at the thought that he puts into planning events, decision-making, interactions with students, interaction with parents. And so from my perspective, thank you very much for being outstanding principals for Mashpee Public Schools. Can I take your picture? I'm going to grab their picture.
While you're taking the picture, I can just add from the students, thank you very much for everything that you do every day. The connections and relationships that you form with these students will impact us our entire lives. And all the interactions that you have every day have a big impact on students and how they learn. And thank you very much for everything you do.
Thank you. That's a gender norm right there.
Purple's my favorite color, so.
He didn't go to Lake.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys. Seriously.
Yes. So, as you know, Mr. Davis is not seeking re-election this year, so we just wanted to thank you for your 3 years of service and for stepping forward to help.
Thank you. Thank you.
To help
Now I got plans.
the school district move forward. So.
Thank you guys very much. Yeah, okay.
I just want to say too, Matt has been on the committee for 3 years, and I don't know if it's exactly the experience he thought it was going to be, because you never know what it's like till you get on the committee, but I have greatly valued your leadership and guidance and support throughout these years, so thank you for choosing to serve, and I'm going to take your picture.
All right. Where you want?
She's posing.
off, so I'm like, forget it. Just gonna wear it.
All right, so, are there any questions on the superintendent's report that was provided in our packet?
Oh, I did want to ask one follow-up question regarding Consuelos.
Yes.
I know Don had asked this a few different times, but our roving unit, where are we at with our?
That would be a Miss Lopes question, I think.
So I pivot.
It's officially inspected and it's going to K-Contact to get its foundations done.
Right, and do we have a timeline for that?
Not at the moment.
Can we get a timeline for that?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you.
Included, as always, is the upcoming events, so I know some of us will be at some of these because our children will be at some of these, but I know sometimes going to the Quashnet School concerts or things that are going on, instrumental concerts, I see that, I'm just trying to scan very quickly, but feel free to go to any of those as the school committee outreach as well. Scholarship night is always a fun night to attend, just gonna put that plug out there for Thursday, May 16th.
And don't forget, you have town meeting on Monday,
Yes.
the 6th.
Yep.
And we have Charlie Jenkins is the sort of student presenter, and she is doing a very short, she has like 2 to 3 minutes, reading an essay that she's written about being an engaged citizen. So,
And also following town meeting, town elections are on Saturday, May 11th. And early voting is currently ongoing at Town Hall from 8 to 4, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. That's
So.
what was on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's
Sorry,
okay.
that's
No, I-
way
no,
too
thank
rude
you.
than it was.
Nope, that's totally fine. I
Information.
I looked as I drove by and it flew right out of my head. So, but 8 to 4 sounds right. But early voting is currently ongoing, and I believe the 4 candidates, including Vice Chair Whedon, have had their statements posted online by Mashpee TV. So feel free to watch those as well.
Is it on YouTube?
I believe so. Yeah, on Mashpee TV.
Mashpee TV,
Yes.
put 'em up, yeah.
Okay. I looked the other day, I didn't see it, so.
They've been rolling them out like one a day, I think. Unfortunately, not all at once. But
Oh, they didn't do
they didn't do an actual forum.
Oh.
It is unfortunate. Okay, so, Finance Director Lopes.
Attached to the FY24 budget reports, nothing to highlight. We are meeting our budget targets. I didn't have any questions before the meeting. Are there any while we're here? That wasn't on these reports.
42, John. The answer is always 42.
That's the answer to the question.
It is. It's the answer of the universe. Okay.
Thank you.
I don't have any updates on FY25. Town meeting is on Monday. I can have an update at the next meeting. And my final part of the HVAC projects, we have had all the subcontractors come through KCC. They are aware of what they need to do to start planning. The hope is to start at the beginning of June. So right now, Mary Kate is working with the DPW to ensure that the space is ready for the contractors to come in. The goal is still to finish before the start of school in August. It is going to be very close, and if there are changes, I'll keep you updated as we go through. There's also an RFQ going out for our design for the high school in Quashnet. That was supposed to go out today. I did not get confirmation if it was released or not. But the bid should come back around May 22nd, and we should have a contract for the end of June. And I'll keep you updated for that.
Can I just ask that you segregate the HVAC expenditures out of school choice from the rest of your list?
Sure, so I have highlighted them. They say HVAC next to expenditure, the last two on the list.
I know,
Okay.
but
Do you want me to keep doing that or do it differently?
put it in a separate column if you could, please.
Sure.
So I can see that running total towards
Sure.
the goal line. I would appreciate that.
Thank you. I'm not aware of any assigned unfinished business that we have, so we'll move on to new business, which will start with the superintendent evaluation for school year 23-24. I met with Superintendent DeBoer this morning to review the combined evaluation summary. For those who are watching and are unaware of the process, each of the 5 of us received the 4 standards of which the superintendent is evaluated with her evidence throughout the year of what she has done toward each of these standards. We then submit all of those with any additional comments, and the chair of the school committee then compiles them into a summative evaluation, which is what is presented in front of us here. So this is a combination of all of our responses. I'm not going to read through it entirely, but I will kind of highlight some of the comments and kind of give the overall score that has been awarded. But standard 1 is instructional leadership, and this standard, the education leader promotes the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff by cultivating a shared vision that makes powerful teaching and learning the central focus of schooling. Underneath that standard, there were 6 subsections, including curriculum, instruction, assessment, evaluation, data-informed decision-making, and student learning. The overall rating in Standard 1 instructional leadership was exemplary, and I will read some of the comments, the overall comments. Superintendent DeBoer has made every effort to ensure the students, staff, and even the committee have the tools, guidance, and direction to be successful. Superintendent DeBoer has made it a priority to evaluate curriculum, data, and all programs of studies to address the needs of our students and staff. The school community continues to become more diverse, and the superintendent has worked hard to meet the new and existing needs of the students, parents, and staff. So, standard 2 is management and operations, and this standard we look at promoting the learning and growth of all students and the success of all staff by ensuring a safe, efficient, and effective learning environment, using resources to implement appropriate curriculum, staffing, and scheduling. The subsections under that standard include environment, human resource management and development, scheduling and management, information systems, laws, ethics, and policies. Fiscal systems is the 5th one. The overall rating in standard 2 was exemplary. The comments under that one, the superintendent has proficiently managed the operations of the district and schools. The school has turned back funds to the town each year based on the prudent management of funds appropriated to the district. Diversity in hiring continues to be a work in progress and hopefully will be reflected in the faculty and administration over time. And I would like to note, while the overall is exemplary, that does not mean that, there are a few room for improvement, proficiency throughout here as well. Again, it's a combined kind of average of our scores. So that is what that one is. The standard 3, family and community engagement. The subsections in that one are engagement, sharing responsibility, communication, family concerns are the 4 subsections under family and community engagement. The superintendent's overall rating was proficient in standard 3. Overall comments, the superintendent excels in communication and engagement, and this is reflected in her involvement in the community, daily attendance, even on weekends at school events, and numerous communications that are sent to families. The superintendent has set a high goal for her successor to demonstrate this level of communication and engagement. Patty does a wonderful job making sure the community is able to celebrate all the good that goes on in our district. We have engaged a large portion of stakeholders who do not even have children in the district. However, the issues that the district faces need more direct and frequent communication so that families and staff feel the items being However, the issues that the district faces need more direct and frequent communication so that families and staff feel that the items are being understood and discussed and solutions sought. While those items often are not overnight solutions, the communication helps make a slow process feel like it is still moving forward for all, and she does a good job at it. Standard 4, the final standard that we evaluate as a committee, is professional culture. The 6 subsections under that are commitment to high standards, cultural proficiency, communication, continuous learning, shared vision, and managing conflict. And professional culture, I didn't read that, promotes success for all students, by nurturing and sustaining a school culture of reflective practice, high expectations, and continuous learning for staff. Her overall rating in Standard 4 was proficient. With the overall comments there, the superintendent has done a good job in helping address cultural issues that exist within the Mashpee school community through professional development and specialized training. The faculty and administration have worked on learning to identify implicit and explicit cultural issues and biases, and how to change their personal and professional actions to help address these. The superintendent has been a champion for the Mashpee, and her understanding and ability to work with the students, families, and communities that has been a real strength for her. Again, the overall rating, this is again combined, looking at everybody's answers, is proficient for this school year, and we discussed, some of the areas that were proficient. Some of the other, subsections did have comments listed. This is her last review here, so I think, that is how it ended. I don't know if anyone has any additional comments or would like to highlight anything I did not highlight, but that is what we discussed this morning, and it has been presented to her for her acknowledgement. So.
I don't know how anyone's going to do what you've done, so yeah.
There's plenty.
Yeah.
Areas.
There's always room for improvement with anything, but yeah, done a lot.
It's a team.
Yeah.
Anyone else have any comments?
Thank you, Patty.
All right. Okay, moving right along. Speaking of evaluations, it's that time since we are about to see a changeover. We would like to I would like to ask that the committee performs its self-evaluation. We have the draft of it here. If you remember, we did kind of expand this last year to include some additional data points. I believe it's the same.
Yeah, so it is a Google form. You just have a hard copy here for you to look at. It will go out to you tonight, potentially, and I think we're asking that you have it, at the top it says to have it in by May 10th, obviously because the election is May 11th, and so it would be nice to have the 5 of you
and Andrew.
Reflect.
Can we get
and
Andrew
Andrew,
on?
yes, we'll send it to you too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, any questions on the self-evaluation? And as just a reminder, again, also for the viewing public, this self-evaluation survey, we kind of hold this up to data, whether it's MCAS scores, test results, or STAR test results. We kind of look at everything as well as how we feel we're functioning to kind of set our goals for the school year. So this, if we could all make sure we get this in, and I am just as guilty sometimes as being maybe a day late or two. So if we could please make sure these are in on time so we can assess this and have this ready to discuss, that would be appreciated. All right. Is Mr. Kuchar still here? He's back there. Thank you for your patience. If you wouldn't mind, we're going to have the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, Glenn Kuchar, kind of give us a little bit of a rundown on the superintendent search process. As we discussed, we were going to engage in their superintendent search services. Yes.
Madam Chair, would it be possible for us, since you added an item 12 regarding tuition reimbursement?
Oh, shoot, yeah, we didn't do that.
Well, that was after.
Oh, that is after. Oh.
Did we take care of that item in case there's someone who is waiting for the outcome of that? I'm not sure.
Are you okay with that, Glenn?
Well, there isn't anyone here waiting.
There isn't? Okay.
No. Yeah. Okay.
Then ignore that.
Okay.
Yeah, that way we're not leaving someone
Normally we
sitting
have
there.
people.
Yeah.
No, I'm speaking on their behalf.
Okay.
Fair enough.
All right. Hi. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yes. So, as you're aware, Superintendent DeBoer has tendered her retirement letter, and we would like to get some guidance from MASC on what our steps as a committee are, whether it's engaging MASC's service or if it's something we do on our own, what our options are, how to move forward, and any guidance you can provide to us.
Well, first of all, the responsibilities of the school committee are very broad. So you have the superintendency on the agenda tonight. You could make me your next superintendent right now. Now that's literally the truth. It's not a good idea,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
it's literally the truth. You have a lot of discretion about how you want to go about looking for the superintendent. So I believe I sent you something, which was our sort of decision tree and guide.
Yes.
There are many options available to you. I would preface this by saying nobody knows more than we do. Excuse me, nobody knows more than you do about what your community expects from you. You're in a very fortunate position in that the district has a very good reputation. The superintendent is retiring. That's the best way for a transition to take place. You're not confronting, well, we're all worried about money, but you're not confronting a serious crisis. There's been no scandal. There's been the kind of things that draw extra special attention to you are not the kinds of things that you need to worry about. So the first thing we suggest that you do is take a look at why the vacancy exists and help that explain how you could go forward. There are some districts that where the superintendent is leaving under less than pleasant experiences, and some districts need to have their fiscal house put back in order, or their curriculum house put back in order, or relationships with the community restored. All of those things, they define what might go into a superintendency. Many successful districts, and I would say at 50% of successful districts where a superintendent retires, will simply immediately make a promotion, usually from somebody who may have been groomed or someone who may have built sufficient credibility to make the move. In situations where the school committee is not confronting a crisis or a scandal or turbulence, the community generally accepts the school committee's decisions because they trust the school committee. And that's the case in most of our very successful communities. So your options include looking internally and making an internal promotion, if that's appropriate, casting a local net and invite internal candidates from the district to apply, casting a wider net, and asking a broader audience of potential superintendents to step forward. Here's the challenge. My first superintendent search was 50 years ago, when 120 people wanted to be the superintendent of schools in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where I was a member of the school committee. 120 people. The last time Cambridge looked for a superintendent, maybe 3 credible candidates. It's not a job that a lot of people want to do. It's a high-risk position. There's one door to the office, and it usually leads out to the street, although sometimes it leads out to the parking lot. You are a public figure. You're under a lot of scrutiny. It's 24/7. And, 50 years ago, if we were looking for a superintendent, he would have come and the spouse would have followed. Now, the superintendent is as likely to be a she, a he, or whatever might be, and the other adult or adults in the household usually have pretty good jobs and can't just pick up and leave Indiana and come to Mashpee. If you're an attorney, you just can't come to Massachusetts and say, here I am, because you can't get grandfathered into the bar. If you're a physician, you just can't leave your practice and come somewhere else. If you're an accountant, if you're a teacher, if you're a principal, you just can't walk into a community and say, well, here I am, where's the job for me as a principal? It's very difficult. So we don't see a lot of out-of-state candidates coming. We do see candidates coming from within Massachusetts, and there are a lot of very good candidates who aspire to the superintendency. At this time of the year, they're pretty much all hired. So it's a real challenge to to do something like that. If you were going to mount a superintendent search at this time of the year, your best bet is to try to find someone who can either to find a community and groups that will expedite a search immediately. And that means getting a search committee together, posting the vacancy, meeting very quickly. If you use a school committee, a search committee, the smaller the search committee, the better. Large search committees do nothing quickly. The meetings take forever. The screening of candidates take a long time. The development of questions, which is a group editing exercise, if it's done by a group of 15 to 20 people, is a crime against humanity. So you really want to think about whether you want to do that immediately or whether you want to look for someone to steer the ship on an interim basis until you can conduct a formal search and start it in the fall. There are districts that will make an internal promotion as a sort of internal audition. There are people who will accept an interim superintendency and hope that it works out. There are districts that have successfully made 2-year interim appointments so that the transitioning superintendent can have an opportunity to actually work with the former superintendent on a transition and can spend a couple of years getting you ready for a more permanent solution. If you wish to have a formal broadcasting of the net, there are a lot of people who can help you with that. If you want to manage the superintendent search yourselves, which many districts can do using the resources of the central office or staff that they have, MASC provides extensive technical assistance services to any member district without a fee. So if you wanted to, putting together your promotional materials, circulating the notice of vacancy to a recruiting network, which is about 1,300 people, institutions that do this stuff, school districts around the Northeast and New York and New Jersey and Pennsylvania, which is where most of our out-of-state candidates will come from, the New England area, and assist your search committee in getting organized. We can certainly do that for you, and you can have a search without spending any money. You can hire a search consultant who can help you, and there are a lot of organizations in Massachusetts who do that. And you should talk to them and see what they'll do and see what the expense should be. That's a basic process. It's not particularly complicated. My advice is, the reason you may need a search committee is because the Attorney General of Massachusetts does not permit a school committee to act as a confidential initial screening and interview body. In other words, you can be the search committee, but you can't have executive sessions. And of course, many candidates want executive sessions because you don't want to be known as the person who wasn't hired in Mashpee. So there are people who want some discretion. Also, just as a matter of interest, I don't know. I know we had some principals in the room. I don't know whether we still do, but if you've ever been a principal or if you've been a superintendent somewhere and you've been responsible for discipline and you've ever suspended a kid from school, that student's parents are probably Googling you once a month to find out where you are. And if you're a coach that didn't give my kid enough playing time, maybe I'm Googling you. If I'm a teacher who was coached out of the profession because I wasn't particularly good, but I thought I was a star, I might be Googling whoever did that. And sometimes when candidates are known early in the process, the character assassinations begin from people who don't like these people for whatever reason. We've had candidates stalked for as long as 25 years by disgruntled former stakeholders. Candidates who did nothing more than act courageously or act responsively in making change. So that's why we try to give them as much protection as they can. Our view of the law is different from the Attorney General's view, but the Attorney General gets to make the rules, not us. So while the legislature absolutely did not intend to exclude the school committee from having an executive session opportunity to screen candidates, it's been interpreted differently. And that interpretation did not start with this Attorney General. It started 2 Attorney Generals ago. So it's just a precedent that's been there. And I don't want the current Attorney General mad at me, but that's the way it is. So there's those issues, and that's why that privacy is important. The Cape is a desirable place to be. Now, it's a very interesting thing about the Cape. The Cape sometimes draws very interesting candidates who are retiring in other states, and some of them have actually said to me, so-and-so is not this one at the moment, so is the vacancy. Well, you know, I'm ready to retire. I'd like to retire. Go to Cape Cod, phone it in for 3 years, and retire again. That's not what you want. And we don't see a lot of out-of-state candidates. If you use School Spring, you'll get a lot of junk. To apply on School Spring, I think you push a button and you're suddenly a candidate. We get people who want to be the superintendent of apartment buildings applying for superintendencies of schools because they're confused about what the process is. But you can reach out and find a very large pool of potential candidates, because anyone who wants to be a superintendent in Massachusetts will go to our website where we post all of your vacancies because you're a member district. You can go to the Superintendents Association's website. They get 1 million hits a year, but they put all positions up there. We only post superintendents and assistant superintendencies, and we only search for superintendents. We don't do any of the other positions. So someone in Indiana who wants to come to Massachusetts, frequently because they're from here, or because quality of life is desirable in many parts of Massachusetts, or because the other adult in the household wants to go home to Massachusetts, will go to our websites and they will find you. And the quality of the candidates that you get has nothing to do with the price you pay for someone to help you find them. They find you anyway because they know who you are. So that process can be made simple, and it's one of the reasons why people often conduct their own searches. But as I said, about half the districts will make an internal promotion. 25% of the districts might hire a search consultant, and 25% of the districts might do the search themselves with assistance from somebody. You get it from us for nothing if you want. So I'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Dan, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I have a pair. So I guess you had talked about the fall time period as being ideal prospectively for a search. Historically, from your knowledge, how long would you say a search takes?
Okay. That can depend. It can be done as quickly as a month and a half or 2 months, or it can take 4 to 5, even 6 months. A lot of it is dependent upon the size of the search committee and how long it takes to get everybody together. The challenge that you have, and this is happening to us, is that you have a 17-member search committee because everybody wanted to be on the search committee. You come together for an organizational meeting, and this one can't come on Tuesdays or Wednesdays because whatever. This one can't work on weekends. This one works in Boston and can't get here and whatever. And it takes you 2 months to get the initial interviews done. So a smaller committee is more effective and get the search done. If you start by advertising in September, when everybody's back and paying attention, you can have a search completed before the end of the calendar year if everybody works to expedite the process.
Thank you. And thinking about obviously the options that you provided, do you have any statistics on longevity of hired superintendents if you look at it through the lens of a local search versus a more broad search?
A local search brings you more loyalty from the local community. A broader search brings you people who may not have the same investment in the community that a more local one does. So it is more likely that a superintendent will stay less long if they are from somewhere else than if they're from a more local area. Most superintendent departures are because of either going to another district for a higher paying job or retirement. There aren't a lot of superintendents who get fired, and there aren't a lot of contracts that don't get renewed. Most of it is retirement. And in Massachusetts, and the educators in the room will know this, you can retire at 80% of your salary at a younger age than almost any other state provides. So we've got 58, 59-year-old people retiring. And I will just tell you, having spent the earlier part of my life in gerontology, the study of how people age and what they do when they age, that's not healthy. So we encourage people to make sure that they're going to be with the district for a very long time. And while there are certain questions you can't ask a candidate, you can look them in the eye and say, if this superintendency works out well and things are going well, will you still be here in 5 years? And that's when it's good to have middle school parents on the school committees, because they can tell whether you're lying or not. But you have a right to do that. You can't, a lot of questions you can't ask. Like, oh, you went to so-and-so, I went there too. What year did you graduate? That's not, that's going to get you in trouble. But you can ask if people will come into the district.
Don?
So one of the things that, it's been a while since I've been through this, so, and I was hoping I wouldn't have to go through this, but we are where we are. One of the things that I think is important for the committee is developing a portrait of what that next superintendent should look like, what their qualities, education, et cetera are. Is that something that Mass would be able to help us potentially with developing that portrait, or maybe have some examples that we can utilize to be able to think about the types of qualities that we're looking for in that successor?
Yes, we have lots of examples. We can help facilitate that discussion. We also have an inventory of, or can create easily a survey of your constituents if you want to get feedback from your teachers, your administrators, and the members of your community. One of our districts a while back, it's where the big stadium is, Foxborough. Doesn't come as easy as it used to. They did a survey to ask the community what the community thought they should do. And interestingly enough, there was a very popular assistant superintendent in the district, whom the superintendent had mentored. And 75% of the responders said, don't spend any money on this search, just do the promotion and let's get this over with. The school committee took that, and of course that's an indication from the community. Now we also have done searches in communities where the stakeholders have said somebody has to come in from somewhere else and fix this, that, and this and that. But Surveys are very easy to construct, they're very easy to tally, and they don't cost anything. I mean, we have a subscription to the survey services, so that's extended to any member district that needed to use it.
Yeah, I mean, putting that together, I think, at least from my perspective, is beyond my capability, but if you have a canned version of something that would be ready to go, then that's at least personally something I would be interested in hearing more about.
We do have plenty of samples, we have plenty of brochures that districts have used. However, every district has 2 or 3 or 4 things that are unique about them that you want the candidates to be mindful of. I mean, you not only are home to a Native American tribe, but you are, you're on the Cape. It is technically, I think, a rural district in anything but summertime. You also have, you know, a huge number of people that come in and think different things about the community. You might have a community that has a long tradition of excellence in music or drama. If you're in Middleborough, they teach 4 years of Russian. And they want to preserve that. I know that might be a sensitive subject, but there are certain things about the community that are unique. If you're from Hudson, you're going to see something about ethics built into educational practices. So you can take a template and doctor it as much as you like. None of this stuff is copyrighted. We have a question guide with dozens of sample questions, and they're all, you know, we're not allowed to copyright anything because most of our revenue comes from government. So everything we have is available to you.
I think in, you know, getting as much feedback from our stakeholders as possible would be fantastic. I do think the committee itself needs to reflect on what is important to each of its members and decide, you know, taking everything into consideration to determine, you know, what it is that portrait looks like for the next person. And then I guess, so a screening committee, you said smaller is better. I think last time Mashpee did this, we had 10 individuals on the screening committee. Do you have some recommendations of the makeup generally that you see of those screening committees?
When there is a screening committee, we strongly recommend that there be representatives of the school committee. Now, a minority of you may sit on the screening committee, a majority of you may not. So it's usually good to have 2 members of the school committee on a 5-member board. Then we usually see someone from the central office, maybe a principal, parents from the different levels, primary, elementary, middle, high school. Frequently there are parent advisory councils or sub-councils of the district where you would want to have a representative. In a district like this, you might want to have a representative from the Mashpee tribe. If you felt that was appropriate, I think that would make sense for you, given the cultural importance of that in this district. And you could do that with 9 people. But I have to admit, you're going to get lots of people who may want to participate. The SPED PAC, the English language learner constituency, the municipal government side may want a seat. I'll also tell you, we've had very successful experiences with a community liaison officer. If that person is available to sit on the search committee, they're very good at checking references to it.
Have you seen students sit on? Have you seen students sit on the committees
Yes.
as well? Okay.
Yes. Not always, but frequently. enough so that it's, it's not unusual.
And then,
It's a tough commitment for students, by the way, but the kids, the students are willing to do it, and the members that we have had have served diligently.
And we've used students in the past in principal search. We've used students in the past in principal searches, so I'm sure we would have interest from our students.
Students are exceptionally astute at knowing who they like, knowing who they respect, and knowing the difference.
in regard to the screening committee, another question is, question development. Do you help or assist with that?
Yes.
Because I assume you have.
We have lots of samples. We have sample interviews. We have a process where people can develop questions. But I'm going to repeat what I said before. It takes a lot of cooperation to develop the questions expeditiously. I have sat in a room for 6 hours trying to come up with 15 questions because everybody in the room felt the need to talk about everything. So we started at 4 and we ended at 10. And so that's why a small, dedicated committee that has people who have been selected because they're collaborative and cooperative, and people who bring general objectivity to the room are very important in a search committee.
Can you just, because we have, almost everyone else has not been through this, can you just kind of then go through the process of what will happen once the screening committee is looking at the resumes, et cetera, up to the point where then the school committee actually gets involved?
While the screening committee is selected and being oriented, the position is being advertised and the applications come in. So wherever they come in, someone will be gathering them and putting them on a cloud somewhere where they can be accessed by the search committee. At some point, applications will close. And then the search committee will meet 3 or 4 days after that and identify the people whom they wish to interview. Then they will schedule those interviews and in the meantime, finalize the questions that they will present to the candidates. Interestingly enough, while the interview and the screening can be confidential, and the interviews can be confidential, the development of the questions must be done in public for the confidential interview. Another area where we disagree with the Attorney General's office, but as I said in my gratuitously nasty comments, they make the rules and we don't, so we're stuck with that.
Just a quick question. So are the screening committee meetings, other than when they're meeting with candidates, public meetings?
They are public meetings, but they may convene an executive session when they're ready to review applications, interview candidates, invite candidates, and interview candidates. So the organizational meeting, the question development meeting, that's public. When the candidates come in, we like to find a confidential site, do the best choreography with bringing the candidates in and out so that they're not exposed, and those meetings are an executive session. And when the committee reconvenes, they go back into executive session and adjourn, open session and adjourn, until they have completed their work and recommend a certain number of candidates to go forward to the school committee. Once the search committee recommends candidates to the school committee, and once you accept their recommendation, everything after that is public. So that means that people can help you with your search, whether you like it or not. So the newspapers, this may be a big story in this area, superintendent search, so the newspapers can start doing their own work. They can ask questions you can't. They can talk to people and ask questions that you're not allowed to ask, and they can report whatever they want, and they don't have to ask your permission. So that's when the work gets a little more complicated on behalf of the people that are checking references and doing their due diligence beforehand. And that's why before the search committee releases the names of people to the school committee and the public, we always ask the candidates, you know that if you accept status as a finalist, this is all going to be public. So anybody who's been Googling you is going to know that you're a candidate in whatever town it happens to be. Number two, if the job is offered to you, will you accept it? I mean, there are some people who will apply for a job in order to tell their other community, look, they want me in Mashpee. You should pay me more money in Mayberry in order to keep me here. So, there is that. And number three, we always ask, within the realm of appropriateness, is there anything else I need to know? Now, by that, I mean, if you were fired from your last 2 jobs, this is a good time to tell us. If you get sued in your previous jobs, if you sued your previous employer on the way out the door, these are things we need to know. We don't need to know anything about how old you are, what your racial, ethnic, or cultural background is, all the private stuff that exists out there. We're not looking for that. We don't ask for it. We don't look for it. And we're not asking for it then. But we don't want the school committee to be embarrassed by making somebody a finalist and then knowing that back in the day, this person was fired for embezzlement or plagiarism or anything else that might have happened. However, you should also know that many people leave their jobs for honorable reasons that might not look good. It's almost impossible. We've had 3 superintendents who self-immolated through the charges of plagiarism, one of whom plagiarized themselves. So that's not really plagiarism, but the public hears the word, and it's, one of our better superintendents had an opening day program, and I'm making the name up, but it's like the Sullivan program from Mr. Sullivan, who used it back in Mayberry, and the superintendent loved it and said, can I use that with attribution for my opening day? And Sullivan said, sure, use it. And the superintendent rolled it out and said, I want to thank the Sullivan company for helping me with this, and this is what I wrote. It turned out Sullivan stole it from somebody else, and it was the poor teacher who ended up falling on the sword. Sometimes you run a big deficit because somebody in the business office couldn't count the money right, and the superintendent has to take the responsibility for that. These things happen. Sometimes a superintendent suspended from school the leading athlete, 3 days before a tournament, and pays the price. So we want to know these things. Anyway, it goes to the school committee from there, and the school committee will develop its own questions. We recommend that, let's say you have finalists A, B, and C, we recommend that you invite them to spend a day in Mashpee, and at the end of the day, interview with you. That way, the people who weren't on the search committee get an opportunity to meet the candidate and weigh in. And then the school committee must meet and do its interview and make its decision.
So,
and just one other thing, there is a process that's been used probably by a couple of dozen districts that we work with, where they put, if there are internal candidates, there's a process that they use to do a sort of mini process with the internal candidates, and this would all be done in public, a meeting with the school committee and a pretty diligent interview takes place, and where they've done that, they've been very successful as well. But they have put the candidate, the internal candidate, through a sort of visit the district, meet the people day, so that people that don't often interact with public schools get to see everybody.
So just to make sure I understood, when the candidates meet with the school committee, that is in a public meeting.
Always.
The decision in regard to candidate A, B, or C, that is done in a public session, correct?
The decision
The decision,
by whom?
the school committee.
The school committee's decision-making is always done in public.
Okay.
It must be done in public.
And then the contractual piece can be in executive.
That can be negotiated. The school committee may meet in executive session to strategize around contract provisions. Now, if you need to do it, we have a guide to contracting, which includes all the different things that candidates like to see, some warnings about what you don't want to put in a contract. And I would say to you, never put into a superintendent's contract the provision that all complaints brought to your attention will be referred to the superintendent directly. For example, your constituents want to come to you with their concerns. They don't necessarily want their concerns repeated. With all due respect to the superintendent, your constituents should have the right to meet with you privately and give a complaint. It's a protected constitutional right that John Adams wrote into the Massachusetts Constitution in 1780 to instruct your officers about how to do their jobs. So we want to protect your right to have those private conversations with your constituent and not have to report everything you hear to the superintendent, with all due respect. Now, if this is about a child being harmed or a crime being committed, that's different. But if somebody comes to you and says, things aren't going well at my school, here are my concerns, you might refer them to the superintendent, or they might say, look, I don't want you to do anything about this, but I'll come back to you later. And you want to be able to assure that they can have some type of privacy. So that's a big one for us, because the Superintendent's Association has recommended in their version of the contract that restriction be put in. Now, we get along with our friends, the superintendents, very, very well. Tom Scott, my counterpart at the superintendents, and I, we attended the same high school. We're all from the same wonderful city of Cambridge. But we disagree on those points. And you don't want to overload the sick leave buyback, vacation buyback. You want to understand the cost that you're incurring. You don't want to have your superintendent retiring and take $575,000 worth of unused sick leave and vacation time, which is what happened back in Randolph about 20 years ago, because he'd never taken a sick day or a vacation day in his life, according to him. And he took it all when he retired because his contract provided it. These things you need to look out for.
I think we've addressed some of that in our current superintendent's contract, but that's a different discussion. All right.
One quick follow-up on that with the questions that the search committee, so the search committee asks their questions. I'm assuming they'll have some type of like question answer sheet that they'll kind of rank the candidates basically. Would those be given to the school committee when the finalists are, like, would the school committee be able to see the answers to the screening committee's questions when the finalists are recommended, or is that something that stays strictly with the
work
screening?
of the screening committee remains confidential.
Okay.
So we urge the screening committee to present names to the school committee in alphabetical order and nothing else. We don't want to pre-prejudice you guys by having one group say, well, this one's really good and this one's okay and this one not so much. But you don't want that.
Okay. Thank you. Brian, do you have any questions on anything?
No, this has been very helpful, and just appreciate the committee for engaging Massachusetts Association on School Committees in this. And I like some of the stuff with the surveys to the community and kind of getting the community input. So thank you for your time.
Anything you want to, I know you're on your way out. but
Yeah, I
anything
know.
you want to give your input?
I think like you answered a lot of the things that made sense in the small, like from my experience from doing any type of like a hiring process. Like you're right about like the smaller groups, but like we are a connected community, so it is going to be important like to make sure that like every stakeholder is represented. So yeah.
And, you know, I have received a few emails from various stakeholders requesting to be considered for the search committee. So we do have a list of candidates for that search committee already kind of pooling, how we decide to pick that group. But I do have, I think I'm up to 6 names now of people from various, some parents, some business community members. But they're reaching out just so that the committee is aware.
I just wanted to add, similar to what we've done with our principals, we have done the Google survey where we've done it for students and gotten their input. We've done it to parent guardians, and then we've done it to staff and community at large, and then gathered all of that. So it is very helpful it actually guided some of the questions we developed.
I have one other big question. So if the committee determines it wants to move forward with a interim appointment, how would we go about that? Do we have to do basically the same work?
No, you can just hire an interim. There are people who are interested in being interims. There may be people internally who would be interested in being an interim. We have a list of people who have retired. You know, they retire in July and they're as happy as can be. And then by the middle of September, they're calling us up saying, "You're right, daytime TV is terrible. I shouldn't have retired. Can you find me an interim job?"
But ultimately, to kick that ball off, you would still need to have a portrait of what it is you're looking for.
The school committee would you'd have to authorize yourselves to do
right.
this, and then the school committee can invite people to apply for the interim superintendency. You can interview. Marblehead is going to interview, I think, 5 candidates for their interim superintendency next year. They got a bunch of candidates. That's generally done in public, by the way. That you don't need the executive session because most of them are retired or are not worried about exposure.
If an internal candidate, however, were to apply, how does that that confidentiality?
There are situations where the school committee will invite candidates to apply and be considered for the permanent superintendency. There are a few that preclude them from doing that. The presence of an internal candidate affects the size of your other candidate pool. I mean, nobody is more than 2 degrees of separation away from Mashpee. So if I am the superintendent in Terre Haute, Indiana, I call my counterpart at the Superintendent's Association, and he calls Mary Burke, his counterpart at MASS, and they'll ask the following questions. What's the board like? What kind of a board are we looking at? They will be very happy that they don't have to go out and sell a bond issue every year for funding. Believe it or not, I mean, Massachusetts is better funding than most other places. They will ask, what's the community like? Can I find a place to live? And is there an internal candidate? And I guarantee you that if there is, a squirrel out there is going to know it. I mean, this is school. There are no secrets. Everybody knows all this stuff. So, and school committees are, undaunted by that. Sometimes they'll just, as I say, go ahead and make a promotion, and other times they'll go through a process, either narrow or broad. Either way, in the absence of a crisis in the community always accepts what the school committee does in these matters because things are going well. Yeah, housing on Cape Cod, I always worry about that one question always
when we do the bigger searches, I always worry about that since there's such a housing crisis. But just things to consider, I guess. Any other questions, comments while we have Glenn here? Anything else? No? Okay, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate the guidance as always, and we'll let you know if we decide, I'm thinking we're probably gonna need some of those draft materials to look at, and I guess that's on us now to figure out what our next step is based on this information.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you, Glenn.
Thank you so much.
So, do we want to have that discussion now to kind of get an idea of which direction we want to move in terms of?
I would say something that really struck a chord with me was, again, getting that preliminary feedback from key stakeholders in the community prior to making any decisions around next steps. So in my viewpoint, I think what we probably should do is get those tools, figure out the channels, get that out, and be able to assess the information, prior to one of our next meetings.
And I agree with that. I also think the committee as a unit needs to really think about what it is they're looking for as far as a portrait of a superintendent that will guide any decision I think that we would want to make.
The only other thing I know the MTA sent us a letter, but maybe it's worth revisiting that, because if we're gonna get feedback from students and students and parents, maybe there's some different feedback that they want to provide, other than what they provided. Not go oh, we already received information from them. Actually hear out if there's more concise things they're looking for too.
Yeah, I would support the community survey. I understand that they said that they have a survey and it's easily accessible to them, but if we already do that within the district, I wouldn't see a problem with that. But I do think that it would also be beneficial to at least look at or entertain hiring a search consultant that was recommended. While they can help us through the process, I think we should also look at that to bring a third party in, or somebody for transparency and accountability throughout the process. So it's not just us driving the entire process, and we have that person to go to as well for guidance.
Okay. Are all of these comments in consideration of the interim? Are we looking to get that information? Do we want to consider interim, or do we want this information? I mean, I agree we need more information from our stakeholders. I agree getting the feedback from the various groups is vital. I agree that as a committee we need to make our Mary Poppins wish list here. But I do wonder if, naming an interim, is that something we want to entertain, or do we want to hold on that as well?
I don't know that you can make a decision in regard to what direction you're going until you know what it is you want. And, while from an interim perspective, without having, knowing what he wants to know, what I want, what each of us feel are the most important criteria, then drives what it is that you're looking for. Right? Yep. Whether it's internal or external, you need to know what it is do you have a good fit?
I will piggyback off Dawn though for a moment and just say, from obviously the presentation, my sense is that for the betterment, to provide a holistic approach to this for the search, it seems like we're going to be leaning towards an interim position. It's just a matter of what that interim plan looks like, right? Where clearly the statement is years of knowledge that fall rolling into the end of a year is where we're going to get our most appropriate candidates that person. Those people could be internal, they could be external, but until we get to that time frame, I think we're gonna have to figure out a stopgap measure here.
Okay, that was the clarification. No, I just needed clarification if that applied to the intern, because in my mind, I guess I viewed it a little differently as an interim was almost just a placeholder while we gathered what we thought we needed, because we did receive an email, full transparency, from Assistant Superintendent Dr. Hanscom, expressing interest in the interim position.
But we haven't even.
But we haven't
even.
No, and that was just based off of the knowledge of Superintendent DeBoer's retirement. So I guess I'm just letting that be known. So it's, I guess I'm just, again, trying to clarify what the will of the, what the consensus of the committee is, and what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for paraphrasing here, but we would like to first run the survey, or first develop what we would like to see in a candidate, get the surveys out pretty much ASAP, to collect information from stakeholders, determine how to go about with an interim potentially, because it does sound like this process is going to be, realistically, I don't see us appointing a superintendent in time for the start of the school year. I mean, I don't feasibly, I personally do not feel comfortable rushing through that to get to July 1st with someone in a contract. I don't know that we are really going to be able to feasibly do that in a way that provides the district with a qualified candidate. I could be wrong, but personally, I'm not confident in that. So once we have that extra information, determine direction for whether interim appointment and how that looks, and then that kind of simultaneously developing our search committee. Does that sound like, am I missing anything here?
Can I say?
Yes, please.
So I'm just going to give you my perspective, because I do know the job, and I think you all know the job from your seats. But I'm hearing you're saying sort of what do we want in our next superintendent. I feel at this stage we're in a need versus a want. I definitely agree that you should develop all of the factors so that you bring in the permanent superintendent that you want, and you've taken all stakeholder voices. But there is angst within our district because of the unknown of what's coming. In our leadership team, we are already working to put plans in place for the summer into September, and that is a very difficult thing to do if we're still in a holding pattern. And so I just want to sort of give you that information that at this point, I feel that you are in the need mode, and that then you would then start your search and do generally, from having been involved with another one, it is in sort of the November time, and then they do the interviews, and usually an appointment comes in February for a July 1 start. So I feel you should be looking personally for an interim, and I'm going to advocate for Dr. Hanscom, an in-house candidate who knows all of what we've been working on, works well with our leadership team, and can continue that work forward. We have many things on our agenda for next year. And at the same time, you get a year-long interview of the person and continue to gather all the information that you want from the community, from the students, put in that formal search, and then make your decisions as you move forward. But I fear a loss of the momentum and the progress we've made, because even if you go interim from outside, that person, it's everyone's still in a hold. Like, okay, is this person going to stay, or what's going to happen when the new superintendent comes in? So there's a lot of unknowns, and not that I don't matter in the mix, but it is adding a layer of stress for me too, because I care deeply for this district, and I feel that we have a very highly qualified leadership team in place that does great work, and that would be what I would recommend for the flow. But obviously, that's my 2 cents.
Clarity.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess my thought is, utilizing your expertise, Superintendent DeBoer, would 1 month make a difference in that planning transition for the office, right? I'm thinking, if the way I envision it in this moment is, my sense is we're clearly indicating that an interim is going to be the route that we need to take. Do we have an opportunity to, again, audit our stakeholders, because what I heard obviously from our presentation was also some of the feedback was, what are you waiting on? Move and hire this internal individual or not, you know, like what process do we want to take here? And that it could look very different a month down the road when we revisit this conversation to say, hey, this is what we have for feedback. We have a prospective green light to move forward with something that we never imagined we could move forward with, or yes, let's appoint an interim person and then work on all of those other wish lists and things that we really desire. And we could do
for the kids. So, and then as soon as you hit June 14th, you know, things scatter a little bit. And we've had a lot of meetings and trying to plan our summer events and convocation. And it's like, how big a role do I play in that? Do I plan someone else's convocation? Like, it's weird. It's a weird situation right now of not being as productive as we could be because there's some unknowns and everybody has angst about whatever is going to happen. Andrew, yeah.
Go ahead, Andrew.
If I can add some insight from the student view about this whole superintendent search, I don't want to say situation, but item. The students at Mashpee, more than other districts, I feel, value consistency. So I don't want to say any names or anything because I'm just a student rep, but I feel like the students would value a interim or uninterim, that sounds weird, internal hire, someone that they already know. That's just my 2 cents from the students.
2 questions. One, does the superintendent, your superintendent association, still do the mentoring program for new superintendents?
Yes.
Do they do that for interims also?
They provide supports for interims as well.
Okay.
Yes, you can have a mentor. You can go through a formal program, but most likely it would be a mentor.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's good to hear. I meant to ask Glenn, and that was not one of the questions that I could remember to ask him.
It is through MASS though, not MASC. It's through MASS.
Yes.
Yeah,
Through the
versus school committee mentor.
Versus
yeah.
God help us if we're doing
Glenn is our Yoda. They have their own.
There's something else. So the other aspect, if we are, I do not know if there are other internal candidates without it being posted. So there may be, there may not be, and that's fine, and this could be a natural progression. I still think, from my perspective, well, so here's the other thing. We have an election in less than 2 weeks. And at least 1/5 of this committee will be different and may have different opinions, depending on who it is. We could have 2/5 of this committee be different. And I always hate to do stuff that will commit a committee right before an election, where the committee may or may not. If you were running unopposed, I'd be fine. We just go ahead. It's not but I don't know what's happening there. I keep coming back to I don't see in 2 weeks. I'm not even going to do a month. 2 weeks that this committee can't think about what it is that's important to them, and do we have what path do we want to go forward?
So can I propose something? We get the stakeholder survey out ASAP. We also post for an interim position and start getting candidates to make sure that if there are internal, I mean, it can't hurt to get that posted. If we only have one, that does that alleviate some of that concern you're having? I mean, if we, I was scanning the Teachers Association and I can pass it down. I mean, one of their asks is the public, to post the position. I don't know that posting the actual position right now is wise, but I mean, an interim one, that to me, again, based on what we're hearing and the conversations we're hearing, or I'm hearing here with the committee is, that's probably the route. But, if we post it for transparency's sake, make sure there aren't, make sure we've got everybody who's interested, know who's interested in what, and go from there. I mean, my only thought, again, to Andrew's point, to Superintendent DeBoer's point, we have an assistant. The point of an assistant is to step up. It's kind of like, when you have a manager, you have an assistant manager, manager's out, assistant manager steps in. That was my thought behind that, but I'm hearing, the committee has a slightly different view of that, which is, again, I'm one of 5. And I guess, if we go that route of getting the survey out like tomorrow, as fast as we can, tomorrow's probably not likely, but as fast as we can, post the interim position and just kind of start collecting those resumes so that when we get the results back, we have the pool of candidates to kind of hit the ground running. But if that's, I guess I'm just throwing that out there as an option, and if that's something palatable for the rest of the committee. I do agree I don't want to leave. My biggest concern is the faculty and the families, faculty and staff and families. I mean, I have every faith and confidence in our administrative team. We have a great administrative team, and I don't think, everything's going to flounder, but I do know that some people, look to have someone steering the ship, and I do feel that it's important that we are showing that we have someone steering the ship. I guess that's just my 2 cents on that.
I'm just going to add a little journey through history. I have a long-term connection with this district, but when I took the assistant superintendent role in July of 15, by November of 15, without a lot of this, you made me acting superintendent. I remained acting superintendent until February of 16, when I was named interim. There was not any of all of this. And then I remained interim from February of 16 to December 20th of 2016, when it was a search process that was internal. But my point was, I basically went from November to the following December 20th in an interim role that didn't seem to have all these layers to it, because it is important to have that central office experience. We have great principals, we have a great leadership team, but the person who knows the best about this role is the assistant superintendent. Now, you put me in there, and I really had 4 months of knowing it. So I'm not quite sure, and I feel like we have made so much progress. We're in a better place than I think when I landed there. And as a reminder, I didn't have an assistant till July of 17 for history purposes. But we made it work, and I just feel like we're so much further advanced. I feel like it should be more of the stability that Andrew mentioned in terms of personnel. Are there other people in the district that hold the license to be superintendent, assistant superintendent? Yes, but they are lacking in areas of experience. And is that me? No, it's one. Anyway, that's my point. That's it.
Okay. For the sake of time, I guess, because it is 8 o'clock, is it the consensus of the committee then to implement the survey, or develop and implement the survey and post? I mean, is that just something I'm thinking? I don't know how the rest of you feel about that. I don't know, hearing Superintendent DeBoer's comments, I guess, where are we leaving this? And how are we coming back to it? Because I would like to have at least a direction we're heading into. I know, to your point, Don, yes, we do have potentially a 2/5 change to the committee, but I do think we should kind of set the course in some regard as to how we want to proceed in some way, at least first step, knowing what we know now.
Well, unfortunately, we don't have any vote on the agenda.
We don't.
So we really can't make a decision today.
You do have an executive though, and you're re-entering public after.
Okay, so, all right. We can collect the surveys and start developing the survey for review. Do we maybe want to add a meeting or two in the next couple of weeks so we can expedite the process?
Or next week, sorry, it's the 15th.
It's our reorganization meeting, yes, after the election.
I think we have a meeting next week with the other, like with all 5 of us.
No.
No.
We have?
No.
No.
Oh, sorry, I'm going crazy.
Says we're busy.
So I guess sending out the survey, in my viewpoint, does not preclude us being able to appoint someone, right? Clearly, we've talked through this. So I guess we know that we have 2 individuals steering the ship right now. I think taking another week or 2 to be able to get that feedback, in my viewpoint, personally speaking, does not seem like a time frame that is inappropriate. And then as we roll into our next meeting, I think we can make a more conscious decision about exactly what we'd like to do with that appointment or not. That's my recommendation.
Thank you, Dan. Don, you are in alignment with that, or
I don't think I disagree.
Brian?
I agree.
Okay.
Makes sense. You got your new committee at that time then too.
Okay. All right. Moving on. We have tuition waivers. Superintendent DeBoer, do you want to present those?
So you have a memo in front of you. There's 4 students. Student A is in grade 11. They are requesting a tuition waiver for the balance of this school year. They had a rental issue, so they hope to move back for the student's senior year. Students B and C are siblings. One is in grade 11, one is in grade 8. They have relocated to Sandwich. They are requesting to stay for the balance of this year with a tuition waiver. And then student D is also in grade 8 and is asking for a tuition waiver for the balance of this school year.
All right. Do we want to vote individually or as a slate? I'll entertain a motion either way. We want to grant these tuition waivers.
And it's actually 4 when that wording in that first sentence. It kept changing throughout the day, so I didn't catch that. It's 4.
You want to do that now as your
My final.
Well, we do have an adjournment and.
Yeah. I'll make the motion to approve the tuition waivers for the balance of school year 23-24 for the 4 students.
Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
I will second that motion.
Thank you, Dan. Any discussion? Hearing none. Dan?
I vote yes.
Don?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
And I also am a yes. Okay. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn the public meeting and enter to executive session.
Two separate calls, or?
No, it's the same.
Okay. So, I'll make a motion to adjourn the public meeting and enter into executive session to conduct strategy session in preparation
Read the
for.
whole thing, sorry.
Yeah.
The Mass General Law.
Oh, including
Yeah,
that one? Okay. Executive session pursuant to MGLA C38S21A2 to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel. And at the end of that, we'll reconvene in open session.
Thank you. I'll take a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. Dan?
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
And I also am a yes. So we are closing public session at 8:04.
Do you want